Rory Calhoun names the gay actors he hates most dated in secret with him. Hates him the most broke up with him in secret. Rory Frank Timothy McCow was born Calhoun on August 8, 1922, in Los Angeles, California. His given name showed that he has family history, since he was the son of James McCow was an Irish gambler who was known for his unpredictable way of life and willingness to take risks, and Elizabeth for Cuthbert, having Irish roots, gave him a sense of grit and toughness to his family tree. Still, Rory's early years were marked by trouble. His father James died, sad to say, when Rory was less than 10 months after his 10th birthday. This sudden loss threw the putting money and feelings into family a lot of trouble, affecting his mother. Elizabeth. After his father died, Elizabeth remarried in an effort to bring stability into the life of her young son, but this new chapter would be hard, for he changed his last name to Rory. He changed his name to Frank due to Durgan, a change that marked the start of a rough childhood. The way his family worked was complicated. It was said that the stepfather was mean, and this instability, which is sometimes abusive, played an important part in shaping Rory's early actions and thoughts on life. Ryan's childhood was full of many problems. The problems, the emotional stress, and not getting enough support from parents led him down a rough path. As a child, he found himself doing bad things, committing crimes like robbery and theft. These first run-ins with the law were a sign of a deeper struggle or search for identity and a place to belong. In the chaos in his home life, the event happened when he was only 13 years old. Rory stole a gun when he was 12 years old. He was sent to prison for a serious crime. A message to the Preston School of Industry, a reformatory for young offenders in California, where the school was supposed to be sort out troubled teens, but Rory's rebellious spirit won out, and he managed to get away with more proof. His refusal to be locked up or held by Rory by the time he was 17 years old. As much as the abuse from his stepfather was too much to handle, and in a desperate attempt to get away from because of how bad his home life was, he ran away. Alone and determined to make it on his own, he started hotwiring cars on his own terms and stealing things. Sometimes, among other things, they robbed jewelry stores, and it's dangerous to steal cars in these ways. Had to have caught the attention of he broke the law, was caught, and was sentenced to. A person who stole a car got 3 years in prison. And taking the time to drive it across the state, spent time in jail at the United Federal Medical Center in the United States. People in jail in Springfield, Missouri. A federal prison is known for housing prisoners needing medical or mental health care. In spite of this dark chapter, Rory's happened right before he turned 21. Mark the start of a new phase in his life. After getting out of jail, he was determined to change his life around, even though the path wasn't simple. He did a lot of different physical and manual. Among the hard jobs are mechanic and forester to hard rock miner to cowboy, a fisherman and a truck driver, roles that showed how rough he was, and traits of adaptability that would later become important parts of his acting. Rory worked hard for these years and was putting the building blocks for a while, living a more stable and meaningful life. He wasn't even close to Hollywood yet. Draw attention to the turning point in Rory's life came up out of the blue while riding a horse in Los Angeles Park. Alan Ladd saw him and called him a well-known actor at the time. Ladd saw there's something alluring about Rory, a personality and charisma that hints at possible stardom. This chance meeting made it possible for the entertainment business, giving Rory a new beginning and a chance to reinvent himself. And Sue Carroll, a respected Hollywood agent, was very important in beginning Rory's acting career. She set up a test for him on the 20th Century Fox is one of the biggest movie studios, and some of his early movie roles were small and not credited, with roles in movies like Something for Sunday Dinner for the Boys 1944 and in 1944, Soldiers, as well as a small part in a Laurel and Hardy. Started making these first parts, even if it was small, gave Rory experience on set and being around how the movie business works. Rory's first played a part in the movie 1945. He was still with the Bullfighters. Billed as Frank McCow. Soon after that, Henry Wilson put his name on him and worked for the famous producer David the Selnick. It was because of Snick that he did it. Was given the stage name Rory Calhoun, the name that would come to mean with rough charm and allure of a leading man. Rory's rise was short-lived, though. He lost his way in 1945 when he was sent back to prison for beating up a police officer, a reminder of his troubled past continuing to cast dark patterns over his. Rory's bright future didn't stop him. Returned to acting with a new sense of purpose and landed his first big part in the 1947 thriller The Red House is a movie that showed off his ability to communicate toughness and dark masculinity that he was also in Adventure that same year. Slowly, Island and That Hagen Girl becoming well known in Hollywood in 1948, Rory was in the movie Miraculous Journey, which turned into a big hit and helped him become a bankable star. He was in 2 movies the next year. Massacre River and Sand are westerns. Making his place in the western genre. More firm genre is a term that would describe a lot in his work. The 1950s were a Rory Calhoun had a very productive time with a mix of heroic leads and sometimes having bad guys in Return of Frontiersman in 1950, which was his first role. Negative role showing how versatile he is. During the same year, he starred in Country Fair is in Charge and showing off his friendly screen presence. His filmography over the last 10 years included a range of styles, such as shows with music like Meet Me After the Show 1951, western movies like Rogue River, 1951, romantic comedies like I'd Climb the Tallest Mountain in 1952, movies about real people, like with a 1953's Song in My Heart. Besides that, he was in famous movies like How to Get Married to a Rich Guy 1953, which made him more appealing to westerns until the middle of the 1950s. Rory's River and Other Books made her presence known. Of No Return 1954, starring with Marilyn Monroe in 1954's The Yellow Tomahawk, One Bullet at a Time 1954, The Spoilers 1955, Raw Edge in 1956, The Hired Gun in 1957. And Take a Ride Out of Revenge 1958. Each part made him look like a reliable lead man in an action-packed movies about adventure and love. When the 1960s came around, Rory grew his business internationally and kept starring in action and historical movies like As Thunder in Carolina 1960, the epic The Colossus of Rhodes in 1961, 1961's The Treasure of Monte Cristo. He played interesting parts in Marco Polo. 1962. The Young and the Brave, and Apache Rising 1965, showing how appealing he is, and films with a lot of different styles, like Our Men in Baghdad in 1966 as well as The Emerald of Artman 1969, even more proof of his willingness to look into different movie themes and place names during the 1970s and 1980s. Rory Calhoun showed up in a number of cult and genre movies that show how the tides of. He played the lead role in Night of the Lepus. 1972, a scary science fiction movie that gained a cult following despite mixed reviews. Looks at After that, he was in Motel Hell 1980. It was a scary comedy that turned into a cult favorite. And Angel 1984, Hell Comes to Frog Town, 1989. Which had both action and satire in it. Rory's last movie part was in 1992's In Pure Country. He played Ernest Tucker, the head of the family and a rancher. This part was right for an actor whose career had a lot to do with Western and rural Americana themes as symbols, putting an end to a long and varied. Rory Calhoun's personal life was his career as full of events and complexities as his. During his time in Hollywood, he was married 3 times, and a lot of people were interested in relationships. Both in the news and among his fans. Lita Barron was his first wife. She is a singer and actress, and he married her in 1948. This marriage went on for more than 20 years. They were together until their divorce in 1970. There were 3 daughters born to Rory and Lita. Tony and Laurie's family life during these years, though, was made harder by Rory's reputation for being a man-hater who would eventually turn out to public eye. When Lita Barron filed for after her divorce in 1970, she didn't back down from making public the reasons behind in her court papers. She named a split Rory had been with a number of women took place outside of marriage. One of the most famous of these is the legendary Betty Graybell. Barron's claim as an actress said that Calhoun had been unfaithful, have been with 79 women during their marriage, a number that showed a clear picture of Rory's life outside of films. The figure is striking on its own, but Calhoun's how people responded to this accusation was even more about who he is and the famous joke he told in response, "That's right. She left out half of that." They showed not only an acceptance of his well-known sexual behavior but also an air of carelessness about His love adventures after he split up with Lita Baron Calhoun married Sue Rodas, a reporter. In 1971 there was a Sue's relationship is more unstable. Rodas was a smart and successful woman. Goal setting became a big deal after Calhoun's death, and together they had a daughter named Rory after her father stood for a unique connection, but their relationship not at all a smooth sail. They got a divorce in 1979, but eventually got married again in 1982. That despite the problems they were having there was a desire to make peace and keep this second marriage brings them closer to their family. To Rhodes, though it didn't last as long as his first thought about a different part of Calhoun had a personal life that seemed to define a balance between love and conflict to his kids with Baron and Rhodes. Rory Calhoun had a daughter as well, with actress Bettina Marcus even more adding to his already complicated personal story about their daughter Athena Marcus. Calhoun carried on the names of two Hollywood stars who mixed the lives of both of her parents were busy with the world of entertainment. This relationship, but it wasn't made official by Rory's marriage, was a big part of his life, adding yet another important link and the growth of his family tree during his life and work. Rory Calhoun stayed a man of strong incongruities, rough and good-looking, fiercely independent, but also weighed down secret things he kept locked up in a shocking and very personal story said to have been written in his later years but Calhoun was never officially published. Is said to have admitted to several secret relationships during his name-giving time in Hollywood's golden age. Two of the most famous male stars of the decades of Marlon Brando and Rock Hudson, but rather than keep track of these dealings with Calhoun reportedly showed a fondness for complicated and charged with feelings. History says that these two men were his least favorite people were not only for the messy web of shame and secrecy all of them navigated, except for the lied to each other and fought for power. Calhoun's place behind closed doors link with Marlon Brando supposedly began in the early 1950s, during a when they were both rising stars with based on the bad boy reputation's unpublished autobiography of Calhoun and Brando at first because they both loved the same thing of bikes, whiskey, and defiance outside of studio norms, but below there was an air of machismo about him, said to be a private and intense sexual an affair that was as explosive as it was unclear how Calhoun described Brando as wild, as a hurricane, and as mean when he was having an affair. He said that was tainted by Brando's emotional tendencies to be manipulative, being cold and always wanting to be in charge. Even though Calhoun said he was drawn to the allure of Brando and his sexual, he also wrote badly about confidence feeling thrown away and used anyone could fall in love with Marlon. Calhoun said they wrote, but once he had you he would spit you out like you were yesterday's news. They finally said grew apart in public as rivals in private, as hurt lovers, and Calhoun Brando was never forgiven for the he said he had psychological damage. The link between him and Rock Hudson was even Calhoun said that their claims were more complicated. A secret relationship began when both singers were under contract with Sony and at the studio gym, they shared a trainer. Hudson, on the other hand, was described by Calhoun spoke softly and deeply shy, hiding who he really is under the front of all American masculinity. When they were alone, their relationship was marked by keeping things secret, getting along, and the quiet desperation of two men who are trying to living honest lives in a time when being honest could cost you your job. But even though they were close at first, Calhoun said the relationship went bad when Hudson supposedly told on him in trust to a studio executive during a fight for a movie part. That betrayal was the worst thing, Calhoun said. Act of being afraid that made him don't see Hudson as a victim of the Hollywood machine, but as a way to make it does the most cruel things. Rock looked best in the mask. Calhoun is said to have written, and he was I'm ready to let anyone fall as long as he held it in place. In the time that Calhoun wrote his thoughts, he was an older man, not just losing faith in Hollywood but with the people he used to trust the most. The anger in his voice when bringing up Brando and Hudson wasn't based only on the privacy of their things that came from a deep well of it hurts to be betrayed and the emotional cost of living two lives. He didn't hate them, not just for who they were but for what they made him think of was a time when it was hard to stay silent, when love was a battleground fought behind closed doors, and when even the closest ties could be used as a weapon. Rory Calhoun, the ruggedly good-looking star, the setting of many westerns and a face in movies and TV shows from the 1940s through the 1980s, died on April 28, 1999. He passed away at Providence St. the St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California, a building known for taking care of many famous people in the heart of the entertainment business. At the Calhoun was 76 years old when he died. Old and had been having a lot of problems, being sick for a few years. His death was caused by complications because of emphysema and diabetes, two debilitating and long-lasting conditions that had been slowly hurting his health in his later years. Emphysema is a type of long-term coronary artery disease, COPD. Is very bad for lung function and is often linked to smoking for a long time, which was common in Hollywood stars of his time. The illness would have made breathing harder and harder for Calhoun, which probably led to a lower quality of life in his last years. At the same time, diabetes, a metabolic disorder that makes it hard for how well the body controls blood sugar, could have made his physical difficulties that lead to a getting worse in general health. Taking care of both conditions would have needed medical care, often strict taking medications as prescribed, and maybe even being hospitalized because of his illnesses. Calhoun had stayed out of the advanced a lot of attention for most of the 1990s, getting away to a quieter life away from the bright lights of Hollywood, taking part in new projects. His legacy stood through the repeats of his old TV show The Texan and the many he became famous for Western movies. A household name decades ago, people who knew him well remembered him as a charismatic man with a lot of layers, individualistic and sometimes moody, but always very passionate about his craft. When he died, an era ended. For Western movie fans who loved the Golden Age, with his square jaw and cocky strut, Rory Calhoun was known for his charm, embodied everything that is American as a cowboy on screen. He stood out among renowned artists like Randolph Scott and Joel McCrea, and that his name might not have been remembered by smaller groups of younger fans of the old Hollywood movies that made him famous. In line with his wishes, Calhoun was burned after he died and left leaving behind over 80 film credits, a rough but interesting personal life, and the name of being one of the last of Hollywood's real Western stars. It was noted in industry that passing publications and were quietly mourned by people who had been following his career and admired how strong he was on and off the screen.